Memoirs of a Doctor, Part 5, Chapter 5, page 68. Taiping to Labuan. Nothing that we do is done in vain. I believe with all my soul that we shall see triumph. A Tale of Two Cities, Charles Dickens. After completing my housemanship in the ivory tower of University Hospital, I joined the Ministry of Health Malaysia in the middle of 1978. My first posting was to Taiping District Hospital as a medical officer. Taiping Hospital is a very small hospital with the basic discipline of medicine, surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, orthopedic surgery, dentistry, oral surgery, and anesthesiology. My Taiping experience. Taiping is the second largest town in Perak with a population of 245,182 in 2013, located 48 kilometers north of Ipoh and 78 kilometers south of Georgetown. Taiping is famous for Taiping Zoo, Night Safari, Lake Gardens, and Maxwell Hill. My wife also followed me and was posted to Taiping Hospital as a government dental surgeon. Working in Taiping was an entirely different ballgame compared to working in University Hospital, which was a teaching hospital. The Taiping Hospital was a service-oriented hospital with no emphasis on training, research, or continuous medical education. In those days, there was a shortage of doctors and the patient load was heavy. The hospital were always short of medical officers. We only have 5 medical officers in the establishment, whereas the vacancy for the hospital was 15 medical officers. This was in stark contrast to the situation today, where there are far too many doctors and not enough hospital. The medical library in Taiping Hospital was inadequate and the system was not conducive for postgraduate training or research. Fortunately, the consultant physician at the time was very academic-minded and had a passion for teaching. He conducted evening classes to teach medical officers on how to pass the Internal Medicine Part 1 examination of the United Kingdom. All the medical officers who were preparing for this examination benefited from his teaching, including me. Outpatient treatment. For the first 6 months, I was posted to the outpatient department. The patient load was very heavy. On a typical day, I had to see close to 100 patients, which was just way too much. I did not have sufficient time to do a proper patient history taking and conduct a physical examination. We only had 2 medical officers manning the outpatient department, whereas we should have at least 4 to cope with the patient load. The government was terribly short of medical officers and could not fill the vacancies. Fast forward to the year 2020, where we now have a glut of medical officers in the market. The oversupply today is such that new medical graduates had to wait for at least 1 year or more before they can even start housemanship. During my time, we started housemanship immediately after passing our final MBBS examination. Compulsory service in government medical institutions have been abolished today. In my time, we had to do a 2-year compulsory government service. Medical officers today are employed on contract basis. In my time, we were employed as permanent staff. How the times have changed. Mobile health clinic. After 6 months at the outpatient, I was posted to the mobile health clinic. The mobile health clinic team consisted of 1 medical officer, 1 hospital assistant, 1 staff nurse, 1 dispenser, 1 attendant, and 1 driver. The mobile health clinic offered outpatient services 5 days a week from Mondays to Friday. On Saturdays, we rested. The mobile clinic van traveled from Taiping Hospital to the rural towns in the district of Larut, Matang, and Selama. Upon arriving at the site, we treated the patient using the van as a mobile clinic. Our van was stocked up with clinic appointment cards, case sheet, medicine, and medical supplies, things needed to run the clinic. We offered consultation and outpatient treatment for simple conditions and dispense basic medications like hypertension, diabetes, infection, simple infection, deworming, creams, lotions, and eye drops, etc., and so forth. Patients requiring hospitalization were referred to the Taiping Hospital with a referral letter. Our team left Taiping Hospital as early as 7:30 in the morning and returned back to base by 4 p.m. every day. In exchange for our services, some satisfied patients gave us fish, crabs, prawn, fruits, and vegetables as tokens of appreciation. Besides medical practice, my wife and I also attended the Taiping Gospel Hall Church for Sunday services and weekly Bible studies. We live in a rented house, which was 30 minutes drive from the hospital. My parents also moved in to stay with us in Taiping. Ministry of Defense and Labuan. After a year in Taiping, I joined the Ministry of Defense as an Army medical officer on a 2-year contract. The government of Malaysia drafted me into the army to serve for 2 years. I underwent a 1-month army training course in Kinwara camp in Kuala Lumpur, after which I was commissioned as an army officer with the rank of a captain. After the commissioning, I was posted to serve in an army hospital in the Royal Malaysian Air Force Base, Labuan. Royal Malaysian Air Force Base, RMAF, in Labuan for 2 years. So towards the end of 1979, my wife and I left on an army aircraft, a Charlie 130, from KL to Labuan to report for my first tour of duty. The flight took us 3.5 hours before we touched down at RMAF Air Force Base in Labuan. We were provided with free accommodation in the officers' quarters near the military hospital. My wife was also posted to Labuan District Hospital as a dental surgeon. Labuan RMAF Military Hospital. The military hospital in Air Base Labuan was a small setup with facility for outpatient consultation and a treatment room for minor surgical procedures. My job was to look after the healthcare needs of the Army officer, Air Force officers, soldiers, airmen, and their family members. I also carried out yearly medical examination for all the soldiers and airmen as part of their service requirement. Patients who required admission or major surgery were referred to the Labuan Hospital. The clinical workload was very light. I only had to see about 10 patients in the morning. In the evening, I played tennis, and at night, I go to the officers' mess for gatherings and refreshment. The beer in the mess was very cheap, as it was a duty-free item. Life in the army was very relaxing. Clinical work was minimum. This gave me a lot of time to study for the MRCP Part 1 examination, Internal Medicine Specialist examination of the United Kingdom, which I successfully passed before concluding my tour of duty. As a captain, I had to wear an army uniform at work. I would be saluted and called sir many times a day by the rank and file, and I had to salute back as a sign of courtesy. Conversely, if I were to bump into any senior officer, I had to salute him and address him sir, and he in turn would salute me back. In the armed forces, discipline was very important. In the event of a war, the discipline of a soldier could very well determine whether they live or die. Labuan Hospital. Since work in the army was light, I volunteered my service in the Labuan Hospital. The medical officer in the Labuan Hospital was my friend, and he allowed me to work with him. He was quite a good clinician and surgeon who was able to do operative procedures, including appendicectomy, hernia repair, cesarean section, and so on. In those days, there was no anesthetist. The hospital assistant would administer the general anesthesia, even though he was not an anesthetist. A couple of tragedies in Labuan. They say life is short. I had a businessman friend in Labuan with whose family my wife and I were very close. It was very heart-wrenching when he committed suicide by hanging himself due to business failure and inability to settle debts. In another unfortunate incident, I lost one of my pilot officer, who was in his 30s, when his helicopter crashed in bad weather during a search and rescue mission. He left behind a devastated young wife and an infant. This incident was particularly heart-wrenching, and to this day, I still get quite emotional whenever I think about it. It's all about who you know. I got to know and made friends with senior Air Force officers, pilots, and their families. We used to invite officers to our homes for meals and fellowship. Sometimes when I travel in an army aircraft on official duty, the pilot would invite me to sit next to him in the cockpit. Once, when I was sitting in the cockpit, I saw a genuine full-circle rainbow. It was breathtaking, to say the least. The panoramic view from the cockpit was extremely impressive and beautiful, especially during takeoff and landing. Even after my tour of duty, I maintained contact with some of the Air Force officers in West Malaysia. They say it is not what you know, but who you know. One of my Bido cousins was working as an airman in Labuan RMAF Air Base. One day he told me that he had been applying for a scholarship for many years, but had always been rejected and was not even shortlisted. On hearing this, I approached his commanding officer, an Air Force pilot with the rank of a major. He said, "Oh, I did not know that he's your cousin. You should have told me earlier," quote unquote. Within 3 months, my cousin received a scholarship to study aeronautical engineering in USA. Considering the fact that my cousin had waited several years with no result, this was truly an amazing wow moment. It's a small world after all. They say that the world is a small place. One day in Labuan, I bumped into someone who said he recognized me, but he could not exactly place where he knew me from. As we continued our chit-chat, I found out that he used to be my MES Scoutmaster in Tanjung Malim. He was working in the Royal Malaysian Navy base in Labuan as an admiral, a senior Royal Malaysian Navy officer. The world is indeed small, and you could bump into someone you know in the most unexpected of places. On the spiritual development front, my wife and I attended an Anglican church in Labuan for weekly Sunday service, Bible study, and other activities. A truly valuable experience. Serving in the army was a valuable experience, away from the hustle and bustle of city life. This unforgettable tour of duty was second to none. The highlight of my army life was the annual regimental night held in the officers' mess. All officers arrived in style, dressed in their official attire, army attire, dressed in their official regimental attire. Sitting would be according to ranks. A multiple course meal was served according to protocol, and all the officers had to adhere strictly to it. We had to know how to use the different kinds of knives, forks, and spoons for the different courses and correctly hold them. It was a solemn affair with speeches, toasts, and so forth. No one would be allowed to leave until the commanding officer left. Fortunately, they gave us a rehearsal on training of cutlery usage and protocols before the regimental night. Otherwise, it would have been disastrous. Labuan's duty-free perks. Labuan is an island located off the coast of Sabah. At that time, it was a tax-free port. Electronic and electrical products were far cheaper in Labuan. Imported cars were also very cheap, and these were completely duty-free. Almost all Army and Air Force officers drove flashy and expensive cars, waiting to ship them back to West Malaysia at the end of their tour of duty. I bought an imported Honda Accord 1.8, and my wife bought a Nissan 120Y at a fraction of the cost in West Malaysia. We sent our cars back to West Malaysia via a Navy ship at the end of my tour of duty. A time for everything. A time for every activity under heaven. A time to be born. A time to die. A time to plant. A time to uproot.